all interested in, and she knows all the answers to. And if she doesn't, she has her assistant here to take notes. So we'll do a.
We're having a hard time hearing you here.
Can you hear now? Are the speakers working?
Yeah. Well, it's not very loud though.
And we can turn it up. You want to test it now? Is it better?
No, it's the same.
Have to shut off the other ones?
No. Check.
There we go.
You just got to get a little closer, I think.
Well,
Get closer? I don't know if I can get any closer. Yeah, okay. Now can you hear me?
well, Brian leaned forward and talked into the mic also.
Well, we have these fantastic microphones, and we do want to make use of them. So, all right. So I'll get into the gist of the whole program. I'll lean right into this, and I will become involved in talking to you all.
You're like a preacher.
So let's do a roundtable introduction of the head table here, and when and if we open this up to the gallery, if you rise, please state who you are so that we know who is talking. So we'll start with Councillor Rose.
Hi, my name's Debbie Rose. I'm a councillor for the town of High Prairie. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, Danielle. Michael Long, Councillor, Town of High Prairie.
Linda Cox, the mayor.
Brian Martinson, CAO for Town of High Prairie.
Brian Panasic, councillor.
Brian Gilroy, rookie councillor.
And I'm not Brian?
Oh, did I turn mine off? I'm Minister Larivee, MLA for Lesser Slave Lake and Minister of Municipal Affairs.
And your assistant who is helping you today.
Right.
Deb Couturier.
Welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
So we have a briefing book that is been made up by our executive legislative clerk here with the able help of our CAO, Brian Martinson. So you will be able to take it home with you and study a little bit of our concerns with the backup information that we provided. So the first, there's about 9 or 10 items on this that we're probably be taking up the 2 hours that you have allocated to us. So we'll have some good conversations on the items that are there. The first one is the Grants in Lieu program. And of course, you know that the Grants in Lieu is, for those in the gallery, the community housing and the social housing in High Prairie is not taxable. Therefore, there are no tax notices sent to those properties, and we do not receive property tax funds for income from them. But I'm going to let Councillor Panasic explain a little bit more as to what we are trying to do to make this an item that doesn't stress the residents and the commercial business people of the town of High Prairie. So Councillor Panasic.
Sure, thanks. I think you're already aware of this, Danielle, but I think the big thing for High Prairie is once that's been canceled, we have a lot more social housing units per capita than probably anybody else in the province, I would guess. I don't know all of the data, but the impact on us, it's an impact of about $80,000 that goes on to our taxpayers, anywhere from 80 to 95. We've heard both sort of numbers there. And we're a very small tax, 2,600 people. We have 935 residences that have to cover all of our tax base. So it's a small tax base. And when you look at what some of the other communities have in there, and you know, we know that communities of about the same size, you look at Beaver Lodge has 6 social housing units, Fairview with 9, Valley View with 9, and High Prairie's got 55. So quite a big difference in the number of units that we have, and that's why for us, it's a big issue, right? That's what I'm trying to get across. And even at 55 units, when you look at it, you would say, well, that seems like it's too many. We have a wait list of 102 people. So it's like, well, we don't have enough. So it's really a catch-22. We can't afford the ones that we have. We probably should have some more. So what are some of the solutions? What can we do to work on this issue? And I think the big issue right now is we can't afford, to cover the taxes on the ones that we have. So why do we have so many units? I feel that it's because we are in a region that has lots of surrounding communities that want to come into the town. And, we've got 9 Aboriginal communities all within, a 45-minute drive, and consider High Prairie their major urban center. So this is where they want to come to. And I think that's why there is so many. And in fact, when Heart River Housing did a little research, there was about 80% of the people on their wait list were of Aboriginal descent, so of some size or shape. So in some ways, it's really, putting a big onus on the people of High Prairie to cover that tax burden. So, I guess to start with is, I know you know about this issue. Is there anything right now being sort of planned by the government? And we have some possible solutions, but would like to hear if what you've got planned.
Right. So it was a decision of Alberta Seniors and Housing not to provide grants in lieu of the tax in that situation, which for the majority of communities does not have as substantial an impact as High Prairie. And I do acknowledge that, and I have shared the perspective that some communities are a little more hard hit than others. I've received no indication there's any plan to go back on that, though, so I honestly don't anticipate seeing otherwise. One question I would have, though, is have you had any questions at all with the other municipalities that maybe you're dealing with an overlap of individuals in terms of who's sharing that market of social housing in your area, in terms of any partnership at all?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Timed out. I was
Yeah, I
talking
realized
too
that,
long.
yeah.
It does time out.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
there has. I mean, Heart River Housing, as our housing authority in this, has talked about this quite extensively, and that's made up. There's 11 different municipalities on that board, and we've talked about this issue quite extensively.
Right.
So in that way, yes, but not necessarily with the Aboriginal communities directly.
Right. It's just one thing that I'm thinking of is you made it very clear that essentially your market for social housing pulls on a fairly substantial area in terms of who you're serving. So there's potential for communication around that as well. But
In what way were you talking about having social housing move back into the Aboriginal communities, or?
Well, not necessarily. I'm just thinking in terms of, say, the Capital Region Board. Edmonton says over and over again that they're the center for social housing for the whole entire district, that nobody goes to social housing in Devon and Leduc and Beaumont. They all move into the city and have social housing there. So they've had conversations around shared services and balancing things out and talking about the burdens between, the flow of people. And so those are the kind of conversations they're having with communities that they have some overlap with. So that just happened to come to mind because I've heard some similar kinds of conversations where it seemed that one community or one municipality was taking the burden that really encapsulated an area larger than it was. So I think it's one potential to have some conversation about.
The Capital Board is Edmonton Capital Housing Authority, and they're the social housing equivalent to our Heart River Foundation.
Yes.
So our Heart River Foundation actually does encompass all the other communities amongst their board.
Right.
So, and that's when Councillor Panasic was alluding to the fact that all the municipalities, yes, in the region have already been discussing this. And
in terms of Heart River Housing, yes, but essentially because they're all located here, you are taking the burden of the absence of GPOT. So I'm saying that the conversation could be had from that perspective as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And Big Lakes County does have,
Have they been helping?
in
Okay.
Foss, Gruard, Canuso, Jussard, and in Nilda, they do have small amounts of,
Right.
and they also have wait lists on them.
So I guess some of the other possible, and we can certainly start those discussions with some of those other communities. Yeah, and we could see
From
where
a
that
regional
leads.
perspective,
But
what makes sense, yeah.
yeah, but I think, you know, from our perspective, we need to look at ways of reducing our tax burden. We're already very highly taxed for a small community. And we had some potential solutions, which if we looked in options to consider is on page 5 or page 8 of your
I
document.
have
Yeah.
mine, yeah.
But one of the ones is that, I mean, you're saying that they're not reinstating the grant in lieu of taxes, so we'll skip that one and go to number 2.
Although I certainly am willing to reemphasize again whether or not they're willing to consider the outliers that are affected more than others. So
Yeah.
I can make a note to follow up on that and see.
This would be, you know, to basically remove the family housing units from the community, sell them off, and, you know, use a rent subsidy program. It's my understanding with other, you know, areas, for example, Sherwood Park, my understanding is they don't have any social housing units in their community. It's all rent subsidy to help work with those communities. I know we did some number crunching with the Heart River Housing, and they figure that, you know, their typical rent subsidy person is running about $400 a month on average. And the cost to operate those housing units is around $480 a month. So if we were to, you know, sell off those units, the town would then get their taxes, and the government could use that same money to do rent subsidy. And, you know, that would still meet the need in the community. Government might even save a little bit of money based on those figures that Heart River Housing did some crunching on. So that's one of those options that might be a good solution. The other solution that we talked a little bit about was the ability to, well, just going back to the selling off of those units, I should just mention the other area that High Prairie doesn't have a good hold on is affordable mortgages. Lots of people they can afford the rent but can't afford the down payment, so they can't get quite enough to get started in home ownership. If those housing units, or some of them, were turned over to Heart River Housing, they could put them through their affordable mortgage program and get these people started into home ownership, which I think would be a good way of doing it, and a service that we haven't been able to provide in our community for a while. It is out there in some of the other communities, but not necessarily for people in High Prairie.
And the plus with that would be, because the title has been turned over to Heart River Housing, they now would be paying taxes on the units. Because as long as title stays with the Alberta Housing, then they're ineligible.
And in no way am I suggesting this is the best option, but it's just a point of interest, is that after the fire, a number of the social housing units in Slave Lake were destroyed, and rather than rebuilding, they actually handed the lots over to Habitat for Humanity as well. So there's some interesting and innovative things that are happening around trying to figure out how to affordable housing a sustainable project for everyone that both the province and municipalities are challenged on.
And rather than rebuild the social housing, the town of Slave Lake, or the housing foundation there, actually purchased 2 apartment complexes and placed the people in the apartments, which was a more sustainable way of housing maintenance was not as much of a cost as in my housing.
And that's a perfect segue into our option number 3, which was, it would be ideal for the town of High Prairie, or one good solution would be to build a multi-family complex where you would have, for example, 30 units, and we're using 30 units because that's the number that is deemed to be sustainable, and you would make that a mixed market. So you're mixing, the social housing and affordable housing and some market rent all in there. So that complex would now become a lot more affordable. It could be bigger, but it's a lot more affordable. It's easier. It's cheaper to maintain in the long run. So, we are looking at a very similar type of project. When I say we, I was talking as the Heart River board member, not the town of High Prairie, but Heart River Housing has been looking at a similar project in Fox Creek, and that one's running at around $8 million to build that. But once it's built, it becomes very self-sustaining. And so there's an initial outlay, but in the long term, it becomes a lot more affordable. And so that's something that, again, Heart River Housing or the Housing Authority here could own that property. They would be paying some of the taxes on it. We're happy. We're meeting some of our social housing needs. So it seems to be one of those issues that could be a win-win for both parties in the long run. So that's another solution that I think might work quite well. And in terms of the grant in lieu program and how to get around that, those are our two, I think, key solutions. We have some other, from Heart River Housing perspective, a couple of other things that we'd like to just bring up and in areas where we're gaps that we have in our housing needs. And one of them is being able to work with our senior self-contained units and affordable senior housing. And that would be another option there or not another option, but a gap for us is that we have a long wait list for people trying to get into our senior self-contained units, the affordable senior housing. And, we could build some additional units on the, and we're actually working right now to put together that type of project. So that's another need in our community that will probably be pushed forward. You'll be seeing that again. And one last thing with the other issue that we have, and we're going to talk about it sort of the next agenda item also, but it's the having an additional area for the level 3 assisted living area. Right now, Heart River Housing in the lodge goes up to level 2. Then we have the level 4 in the JB Wood Extended Care, but there really is no level 3 facility in our community. If you need that level of support, you're either paying for it on your own, or your family's paying for it, or you're having to move to get that level of support. So that's am I getting that? I'm drying out. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to somebody else to continue on it.
And that does take us to the second portion, which is the extended care application.
Can I just comment once on the housing issue? Yeah. Danielle, you had asked, you said, had we communicated or tried to collaborate with regional municipalities? Now, did you mean First Nation communities? Are you deeming them municipalities? Because that's been a contentious issue.
Yeah, no, First Nations are not considered municipalities. That doesn't mean that you can't necessarily come to some kind of agreement if there is clearly an overlap in terms of service. That gets a lot more complicated, so yeah. So in terms of Heart River specifically, I was thinking the municipalities that, High Prairie is embedded in Big Lakes.
And we have had those
Right.
discussions.
Perfect. I did want to make a comment on the fact that Now we have a huge infrastructure push right now, and social infrastructure is on the list. Affordable housing is on the list of projects if they're ready to go, and that's the whole challenge is some of those things. So it was interesting to me when you talked about Fox Creek having a project on the go in terms of that, and I'm not sure if this is still very much up in the air or if you've made any real plans in terms of where you want to go, or just more speculation at this point. But there definitely is, I mean, we have a $34 billion infrastructure, you know, run out over the next 5 years. And certainly there's projects that, you know, are shovel ready right now, but there's room in the next few years for more projects to come online. So I think there is opportunity there. The challenge is, of course, there's a massive infrastructure deficit in the whole entire province. So, you know, it's trying to get there. So some of that is always the challenge for Heart River to make the case.
Just in case, in the Fox Creek one, it is shovel ready.
Perfect.
We've had all of the architecture drawings, we've got the site, we've got the location, it's all ready to go. The High Prairie, so affordable living for the seniors, we are very close. We've hired the architect, we've got some initial drawings, we've got to revamp those. There's a group to revamp it, so that it's very close to being shovel ready, and will be ready, you know, within 2 or 3 months. I think we could put out the contract for that.
So just turn this on again. So if for your community, you consider that a number one priority and something that you want me to advance on behalf of High Prairie out of your key infrastructure needs, I'd be happy to do that. The challenge is always trying to be, where does it fall? Where does it fall on the list? And if it's your number one, I can run with that.
Yeah, and I'm just speaking, we haven't talked about this as a council yet, so I'm going to speak on my thoughts. Is that I think number one is we need to work with the social housing end, and if we could get a housing complex for, you know, a mixed market, I think that would be a better bang for our community. But the social housing for the seniors is still very much a need, and that might be what we can put forward. But if there's any possibility of that other one going ahead, we'd like to know that.
Well, and certainly that kind of structure that has some kind of cost recovery associated with, some kind of partnership associated with it, those kind of projects, you know, can be a little more palatable some of the time. And if we know there's no significant operating cost that comes on the other side of it. And so certainly, again, if a business case can be put forward, that it's a reasonably small amount of money with no large operating cost on the other side, then I can push for that.
Recognizing that the Grant in Lieu program helps assist some of the most vulnerable people in the province, and certainly in our region, what was the rationale for the government in canceling it and not having something in place? We're seeing a lot of scrambling right now, and a lot of people worried as to where do we go from here, and we're not getting a lot of the only firm thing we've gotten so far is it ain't happening. What was the rationalization for that?
Not being the Minister of Housing, I wasn't involved with the decision to go that route. So essentially, I mean, you know, the grant in place of taxes was not so much about the people who were in the social housing units, but about the municipalities having access to what they would have lost, because that's not a property that is paying your normal property taxes, right? So I guess, I mean, and I'm guessing this because I haven't had the exact conversation, that it was, they made the call that it was a nice to, as opposed to for the municipalities, and that there was substantial benefit to the municipalities to have the social housing there with that. But again, I mean, I can, to housing and get the official response to you and get that. But I've certainly not seen any indication of flexibility or rollback on that at all. Nothing. And I knew when we were having these conversations as a caucus the impact that it had on High Prairie. I made it very clear that for some municipalities it was really substantial, and it certainly is a challenge for those municipalities have a huge number of units, and you really are atypical, which is why you have been hit by it in a way that's very different than the vast majority of municipalities. So, and which is, again, I have the offer absolutely to say, okay, so we've been doing this. There are some municipalities that have been hit really hard. Any consideration? We're outliers, but I think, to be fair, some of it is exactly what you're saying, Brian, is an indication of the fact that the model that we've been using for many years isn't necessarily the one that's most sustainable, and moving towards a multifamily dwelling that's a lot more efficient and makes more sense for the community. The costs that are entailed with all of that is moving more towards that as opposed to the single family dwelling, which worked for us in the 70s, but maybe isn't what we need to be doing right now.
So are you encouraging us then to continue to correspond with the Minister of Housing, stating the fact that we are one of the outliers? Do you think that we would be getting any relief, or it's hard to say? I know that.
As I say, and I'll do it because it's true that it's a huge impact. But I think the challenge is more, even if we could manage that in the short term, the reality is we need to move to a situation that's more sustainable and move on. So regardless of whether or not I can talk really well to them and convince them that we should do something for a year or two to help, balance the change, in the grand scheme of things, the way that things have been done for a long time, we know it's not the most sustainable and doesn't make the most sense economically for the province or the municipality. So how do we move on and do things in a different way?
Okay, we can take that back as a council and probably would be asking for temporary relief, accepting the fact that the model is changing and that we're going to be moving towards one of these options that we've presented as to how to absorb the least amount.
Right. I'm not making any promises, but I promise. Well, other than to ask.
Yeah.
It's not my department, but I will certainly ask.
Certainly, we'd expect our MLA to do is
again.
To
just to be clear, I will ask again.
So moving on.
Just one thing, but just to wrap up, that just so that you know, we are with through Heart River Housing. We are meeting with housing in Edmonton on the 3rd, I believe, second or 3rd of March.
Okay.
So we will be meeting with the ADM of that department, Mike Leithwood.
Okay.
So, well, keeping on it from all angles.
I'm very interested to hear the outcome of that. Okay. Thank you.
So the item number 2, of course, leads on from one of these options, and it is the extended care level 3. And it basically provides a little bit of detail about the hardship that families are incurring by looking after the older parents and grandparents that are needing that level. They're not ready for the nursing home, but they cannot look after themselves as per the Pleasant View Lodge guidelines. So they fall within an area that's very cost intensive for families who wish to ensure that their parents and grandparents are living a quality of life that they certainly should be available to them. And it's in some cases it's up to $3,000 a month that either the senior is putting part of their money in or the families are putting money in, and yet they have no access to this level of care in our community. And that is why Heart River Foundation has said that one of the construction projects that they want to put forward is a 10-bed extended care that they would attach to the Pleasant View Lodge. Pleasant View Lodge has a lot of land available to them. They were had a lot of foresight, and They, the forefathers of the town somehow or other set aside quite a chunk of land for seniors housing. And this is a good opportunity for another wing on the lodge. The lodge here has a good reputation. It's well used by a lot of the seniors. In fact, the usual statement that a senior makes once they move into the lodge is, "I wish I had moved here 5 years sooner. I didn't realize it was going to be so good." So it is not, it's traumatic in some way, but it's once it's accepted, it is actually, we're finding that the seniors are very, very happy with our lodge program. So that is only the number 2 issue, and I think we can move on to number 3.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have been to Pleasant View, and it's exactly as you said, a very positive, pleasant place to be. And I've been in a number of lodges, not all of them are the same. So I do very much consider Heart River Housing a really fantastic organization, well organized, common sense in terms of moving forward. So I look forward to, again, getting the business case for sustainability. I know Lindsay works really hard to make sure it makes sense. So we'll be happy to work and advocate for that project.
Thank you. So item number 3 is the new hospital, and this is items that Councillor Long is quite dear to his heart. So I think I'm going to let him speak on the items that we foresee are going to be up for discussion in our new hospital.
The issues that we face. Darn. The issues that we've been facing here, especially when it comes to issues of dialysis, for an example. We have a nice old hospital. It's tired. It needed to be replaced a decade ago. We appreciate that it's being replaced now. We don't need, as the letter that we received from the province, a wonderful facility with empty shells in it that may or may not offer dialysis, chemotherapy. We need those facilities. We have the second highest rate of dialysis and diabetes in this region. We have the largest Aboriginal First Nations community in the province and certainly in Canada. We are past the tipping point when you talk to any of the docs here. We are past the tipping point when it comes to the issues of diabetes, of renal dialysis. Homeostasis and home dialysis is not an option. You need extremely sterile conditions. You need potable water. It's not an option. And so for us to hear that we have this wonderful facility that has a shell for potential dialysis still means that the residents in this area are traveling hundreds of kilometers away, spending hours and hours and hours on dialysis, away from their safety net, away from their families. You have your grandma, grandpa, kukum, muslim, they're all being sent away to have their treatments with what appears to be little or no concern or regard from the province at all regarding this issue. We've put up with it for decades, and now with hopefully a new government in place, would have more empathy and understanding as to what we're facing here. And apparently that's not what we're hearing. And so for me, I hope that we hear from the province that we will be receiving our dialysis, that we will be receiving the chemotherapy, that those facilities and the facility itself will be up and running and ready to go to serve the needs of the people here now, not another 10 years down the road. We can't wait any longer. The problems are going to get worse, and this will only exacerbate. And I don't know why the province is seeing this as being, well, a non-issue. Really, we're hearing that it's a shell. you wrote it in a letter that it's a shell that is going to be in the new hospital. And for the people in need, and again, I have to emphasize that we are in need. And if you go to the statistics that we have, that shows, for one, we die 5 years earlier than anybody else in the province. Our life expectancy is 75.7, the province is 80.5. If you go on to and look at the mortality rates, if you look at our Aboriginal First Nations, 37.6 versus 3.4% in the rest of the province. And it's not news. It's not new news. It's old that people of Aboriginal and First Nations descent are tenfold more likely to have dialysis needs. And to say no to this request, which is, I think, one of the most important things you'll be hearing, in my opinion, and to brush it aside and say, well, you'll have a shell, is, quite frankly, in my opinion, irresponsible. And we hope that listens to this and knows the stats. Everybody knows the stats. Nobody seems to care because it's high prairie. And I hope that's not the case. We're counting on you. And now that you're in the cabinet, we're really counting on you. And so, although I know I come across fairly stern on this, it's because it's such an issue, an important issue. It's a life and death issue. It's a quality of life issue. And we've gone so long without anybody hearing us. And now's your chance to make that difference for us. When we go on to the other issues regarding, I'll go back to the front. Here we go. The chemotherapy. Again, just the trips alone to get their chemotherapy is over $500. And when we look at the distances traveled to get there, again, we're talking about quality of life. We're talking about families being disrupted. We're talking about people who are away from all their support networks. And with no one hearing us, we have a wonderful shell being built for us. And we thank you for that. It's not good enough. The operating theater, number 4 of the concerns for the new hospital. Our community had made arrangements with a team of surgeons from Grand Parade flying once, twice a month to do day surgeries because we had the 2 operating theaters. Those are stripped, they're sterilized, and now we have a wonderful facility being built for us, and hopefully we'll be able to have the second operating theater. We have problems in regards to staffing issues for this hospital. We have we have the need for anesthesiologists. We have the needs for people who are qualified to operate the dialysis equipment. You have a community that is willing to help. We have put a lot of money into ourselves, into previous drives, and only to see our equipment go away to Slave Lake. What is it that you can do for us? What are some of the assurances that we can get from you to say that you're going to push for this to happen? A shell is not good enough.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so I certainly have been involved and been having conversations both through the Healthy Council, right? That's what it is. You know, you get these acronyms and I can't remember what they are. And then in conversation also with the town, with the minister. And okay, so I'll try to take these one piece at a time. Regarding the chemo, I really, really want to see this too. I mean, I watch people from all the communities from across this riding traveling for chemo. What I have been told is that the provision of chemo is an incredibly complicated, knowledge-intensive process in which the staff really have been determined to need to have enough demand on that and the practice of doing it over and over again in order to make it sustainable, that the risk of safety challenges to people who are receiving it, if they only do it, say a few times a week, are there. So that's the answer that I've got back in terms of the chemo. And what I have been told is that AHS has done some projections on the numbers and would see that coming at some point in the future. So it's not a never, but right now they continue to say no. But I do realize the challenges and we'll continue to see if we can work outside of the box to come up with new solutions to that. So the way it's been presented and the kind of conversations that have been had up till now didn't create a reasonable.
Are you just saying that we don't have the numbers of cancer patients in the area to warrant?
Essentially what they're saying is the number of cancer patients that they have wouldn't actually create enough demand that someone would be able to maintain their skills.
And how does AHS count the numbers? Because we ran into this when we discussed with the minister the dialysis numbers. Mm-hmm. And once somebody leaves the area and receives treatment at the Cross Cancer or in the city for dialysis, right, they become numbers of the city and not ours anymore in the count. So it was kind of skewed, mm-hmm, and it never allowed us to really get a true count. Okay. So is that accurate? I
mean, I can talk to them about it. I mean, the truth is unless they actually choose to move to Edmonton, in which their postal code changes, they should be able to, I would think, pull that based on their residence code. I mean, I can say as a public health nurse, when I went into Meditech, I could pull and say by community how many people had their tetanus shot. So I'm hoping they would be able to do that for chemo as well, but I can double check on that and see what's happening with that.
Just out of respect for the hard work you're going to do on this, we have contacted the two main local physicians' offices, mm-hmm, and their managers are going to look back at least for the last year and get you numbers for those they have referred to out of the area for both chemo and for dialysis. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like, we might be able to contact a couple of the surrounding areas to prove that this should be a regional spot, mm-hmm, because apparently this is one of the best, going to be one of the, if it's a regional project, mm-hmm, which is, because we're halfway between Grand Prairie and Slave Lake, and the encompassing amount that I've heard, we might be able to get you the numbers that would justify this and help give you some ammunition in which to speak for us. Would that help?
I mean, certainly the more information I have, the easier that would be. I have, in conversation, basically HSC's Slave Lake and High Prairie as co-hubs, and the idea that there may be some specialized services where some might be in Slave Lake and some might be in High Prairie. So what I foresee and kind of the impression I'm getting is that they do see High Prairie as that place for chemotherapy moving forward once they can get the numbers for that regional area. Unfortunately, the other response to that is seeing it as a co-hub at this time with the numbers in the region, making a second run in Slave Lake using the equipment and the staff that they already have is the response that they're going with. Again, it's not a no. It's as demand, basically as soon as the second run is full in Slave Lake, then they would have completely used up the capacity of Slave Lake to meet the need for dialysis, and then that's where we'd be looking to expanding to High Prairie. So that's where they're at with that. I did want to touch a bit on home versus this form of dialysis. Home dialysis is peritoneal dialysis, which is a very different process, and it doesn't require the complicated equipment involved with the kind of dialysis that's in a dialysis unit. So in terms of the concerns with residents that maybe don't have the sanitation centers to do it at home, if they're going to have to travel anyways, it is something that we can definitely have conversations around, providing a space and support to do that, the peritoneal dialysis somewhere on site, because that's a completely different question and story altogether. And so absolutely, we can have some conversations around that and see how we can provide support for those who, and peritoneal is considered, I guess it'd be, if we do the concept of designated assistive living 3, 4, and then moving into long-term care. What happens in a dialysis unit would be the long-term care. Peritoneal dialysis might be the designated assisted living kind of route, right? So you wouldn't want to bump up unnecessarily. So again, it's about providing the right care in the right place. And so I think that we can have some conversations around supporting those people who their peritoneal dialysis is the right choice for. They just need some help to do it safely. So that's definitely something that we can address.
The helipad, of course,
There's always ongoing discussion on the helipad. We've raised in our community $70,000, and we're expecting for this year again, we will be doing the charity golf tournament. Hopefully you'll attend this year. It's a great time to meet and greet, and also it's raising money for STARS and.
Do you have that scheduled already?
No, but it's going to be in August.
Okay.
August
So
11th,
August the 11th.
county decided yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, there you are.
Good to know.
August the 11th. Thank you very much. So write it down because we'll be looking for you. So have you heard any more about the helipad, or have you heard anything on that?
I was under the impression they were supportive of working with you to make that happen, but I can get a more specific update on that and get back to you.
That would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will definitely get an update on what's happening with that.
And I think Councillor Long did a good job of taking a brief trip through the statistics. This, of course, comes from the community profile, the primary healthcare community profile. It's the most up-to-date one, March 2015. It's 61 pages. Those in the gallery that are interested in learning more about the state of the health in our region, which is a large region, it's on the Alberta Health Services website and is available for anyone that wants to take a read through. It's quite an eye-opener. It talks a lot about the statistics of comparison between High Prairie and the rest of Alberta. Certainly, it's an eye-opener when we find out that it's a danger to live in High Prairie, that we do die younger, and our region is much in need. There is a sister report that is available, and I'm not sure if it's on the Alberta Health Services website, and it is the TELUS Health Report. There are the top 4 areas in Alberta that are requiring health services are inner city Edmonton, inner city Calgary, the Hobbema area, and High Prairie. It's not always best to be one of the top, especially in this instance. So please keep in mind that yes, we are recognized as a high area.
I just have 2 more comments on that. Yeah, certainly all of Northern Alberta is substantially higher, and particularly with chronic disease, High Prairie is unfortunately very high. So one of the things that I know I've been working with and advocating really strongly for is more of the preventive work around that with the new facility coming. So it sounds very promising that an extensive chronic disease management team will be part of the staff with the new clinic coming with that, because I think one of the pieces that has been missing a lot with the community is that kind of support in the past. So it doesn't help those who have gone down that road already in terms of that, but they do prevention, but they also help mitigate and reduce the risk for some of those people. So example, providing that continuous ongoing support for diabetic clients to help keep their sugar down, to do some of the monitoring to see if their vision is deteriorating, those kind of supports, and reducing that. And So, you know, prevention, but also that secondary and tertiary prevention, making sure that they're, those who are already ill, that the complications are less. So that is a piece that we're working really hard on, and I think would be a tremendous asset to this community. And the other part of that is you had talked about recruitment being a huge issue. One thing we found with the new clinic in Slave Lake is that we have people coming because of the model that's in that clinic. And I know we're working really hard with HS to have virtually the same model in High Prairie. It's a model of collaborative work that is incredibly attractive to very energetic, cooperative-minded individuals. It tends to attract a very high quality of individual to that situation. So again, I'm working very hard with Kevin Worry, the medical director for the North, and that is something I've been pushing really hard with Alberta Health, because it makes sense. It makes sense on every front. I think that would be much better for the people of High Prairie and for their health outcomes, which actually makes sense to Alberta Health as well. So I'm supporting Kevin Worry and pushing really hard for that for High Prairie, and I want to see that here, because I really do think it will help with the recruitment and retention that's needed, you know, for the anesthesiologist and the staff that's required. And I think that we can see some of those outcomes going forward, which will greatly not just have a new building, but the draw for the whole entire change in the model going forward with that.
So before we leave health, can you give us a little insight on the mental health review that you sat on, and when will we hear results on it?
Next week. Yeah, so certainly it was tremendous traveling around Alberta and meeting with people, from those who had disease, their families, to those who provide care either in the community with nonprofits, with the police service, with, you know, those who help those who are with corrections, and met with all of those, and pulled together, you know, a pretty extensive list of things that could be done better. And we presented that on December 23rd to the Minister of Health, and she's been busy reviewing it and wanting to have a clear response to it when she released the report to the public. So that should be coming next week. So I'm incredibly excited to be finally able to share the results with that, and also excited to hear from the Minister what we can get started on right away.
We'll be looking forward to that then.
Great.
Okay, so item number 4. And this is something that actually the region, the Northern Lakes College, the 2 school divisions, a little bit from Heart River Foundation, the county and the town have really come together on this vision that we would like to really enroll your help on, and to move this forward. And it is it's certainly a vision that it would be I don't know how to describe it, but this is a good use of a site that will not be that would be sitting vacant otherwise. And so it's a little bit of a story to read, interesting story. However, it discusses the fact that Northern Lakes College has been looking for land for a site. It's the fact that the 2 school divisions have also, in their silos, been looking for a new high school or a modernization, and the fact that just by communicating with each other, they have realized that this what they would like would be so enhanced towards an integrated college on the whole hospital site. Councillor Panasic, did you want to put a little bit in?
You're right on the money. I mean, it's the benefits of having everything on one site, you can go on and on. I mean, having shop facilities that everybody can use, having the computers, the money that you would save as opposed to doing this 3 different times. List goes on, and I know you know that. So I think the key thing with some of this right now is that it is time sensitive, and that we do need to really try to get a commitment, because the college, they've indicated that if they can get the money, they want to start right away. They don't want to lose it. So if one party gets money and the other ones don't, what's going to happen? But if we can get a commitment that the land is there, if the college gets their money, then at least they can start, and the other ones can, if not build on right now, build on as soon as they can get the money. So we really need that land commitment in the next few months is critical to making sure that project can go. Otherwise, it will go somewhere else and it may not happen as a collaborative project. So it is time sensitive in that way, and that particular parcel would be ideal for this project. That's the ideal spot for it, centralized within the community. That was the only other things to add to it.
Yeah, so this is not new to me. This came up the very first time I met with all of you. And if you recall, I'm tremendously excited by this project. I think it's fantastic. I think these cooperative and collaborative structures where, we share together are the way of the future, very much so. So I was somewhat frustrated as well with the way things have been going with this conversation. It's been a while since we touched base, so I was having a look at the notes for the agenda this morning and was like, oh, it is time to follow up. So I actually talked to one of my assistants in municipal affairs and set him on that. So I just was quickly checking to see if he'd been able to find out anything, but he agreed, waiting until it's decommissioned to even start having the conversation about the potential possibility of that land transfer seems, maybe, to be honest, a little silly. So he was going to be working on that today. So I will follow up with you as soon as I can see where that goes. But it is something that I've been asking about since the very first time I heard about it, because it makes sense to me. I would love to see that project come to fruition. So I definitely will keep on working that with you. And if you haven't heard anything for a while, please don't hesitate ever to give me a bit of a poke, because sometimes if I haven't heard anything, then it needs to come back to the top of the list.
We have right now the CAOs of the different organizations and the president of the college, the superintendents of the school division, the mayor, the reeve, and the higher echelon. Right now, we are just meeting to decide a path in order for the town to obtain the land. And we're waiting again a little bit for Northern Lakes College to see what's happening with their application. But the next meeting, I believe, is in March. And then by that time, I should have had a letter formulated to go out to Minister Hoffman. No, I think, who am I sending it to?
It was Hoffman originally.
Yeah, I'm sending it back again because we are working towards the fact that it was a donated land and that we don't feel the province should be the one to benefit from any land value increase at the expense of the citizens of the town of Highbury. So it's the wording of the letter will be basically, you should give us the land back.
I don't completely disagree, so we'll work on this project together. Absolutely.
Just one thing on that. I mean, even if it does go the route where another government department, has to request it, I know that we could get the support from either advanced ed and education to request that land. So, I mean, it is essentially government departments wanting the land, but not even being able to ask for it yet and get a commitment is really holding things up. So in one way or another, I think it should be, be able to get back for that project.
And that is part of the problem, is that none of the educational institutions want to step forward and say, let's request the land, because they haven't really got to the point of telling the different departments, this is our number one priority, because they haven't got the land. So it's kind of a catch-22. So
The one thing, Danielle, that they all agreed on was that we looked at in a couple different discussions, transition rates for students to high school, students from high school to college. We're the lowest in the province. And yesterday at Growing the North, we were told again, Northern Alberta has the lowest transition rates of kids actually passing grade 10, let alone going to college. So we kind of feel strongly that this is an opportunity to bridge that gap and to make it a fairer playing ground for kids that, if they're coming out of Peavine or Trout Lake or Gift Lake, sometimes even coming to High Prairie is a big move, let alone expecting them to go into Edmonton or further.
You don't have to sell the project. I really am in love with it. So, yeah, okay.
So the next item is the dog handler. And the dog handler is something that we have talked about for last August, I believe. This came on our radar, and we have been kind of waiting for a reply, and we haven't had anything on this from the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General regarding the fact that there was a dog handler position in High Prairie assigned to the High Prairie area, and somehow through attrition, the dog handler position moved to Peace River, and then I believe they quit, and the position didn't get filled, and it just became a schmozzle. So we were trying to bring this back on track and work with the Lakeshore Regional Police, who are fully supportive of the fact that this position should be in High Prairie so that they can access it also. So I think that was basically what we wanted to bring to your attention, is we just haven't had a reply.
Yeah, so this one is a brand new one to me. We haven't had a chance to chat about this before, so it's certainly something I can look into in terms of, and to be honest, how much control we even have over where the position might be. I don't even know at this point. So
you don't have a lot of control in this, but you do have some, in the sense that the province is the one that hires the RCMP. So
to some extent, we provide the money.
That's right. You provide the money.
It's more like an independent contractor that we provide money to. So, however, we do provide the money. So, from that extent, the person who holds the money has, to some extent, some control. So, I'll certainly talk to Minister Ganley and see what we can do in terms of making that happen.
Who do we usually talk to? Is there a Mr. Sweeney or Bill Sweeney in the Minister's office? I think assistant or something.
Probably I would guess you probably talk to somebody in the actual department. So I'll talk to somebody in her actual office and try to get an answer.
All right. And
learn a little more, because this is new to me. This question hasn't come up. It doesn't come up that often. So I'll have to be briefed on that whole process thing.
All right. Next item is streetlights, and although our briefing note says that we have not received an answer, ta-da! Today, yesterday,
I had seen it.
we got an answer.
Yep.
And so Mr. Mason has responded and regarding the overlay, they have hired a consultant to start the process of engineering the overlay. Whether or not it will go ahead, his words are, "We will make every effort to secure funding to have this important project completed." So please speak to him and say, secure the funding.
Perfect.
Streetlights. Councillor Emter, who is no longer with us, was one that brought this to our attention, and it is, well, as the grants in lieu went, we started looking at other operational efficiencies, and one of the ones that we have zeroed in on is the inequality between communities regarding highway street lighting. So the question that we brought up to the regional transportation at our Alberta Urban Municipalities Convention was, this is a program that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense as to who gets the street lighting paid for and who doesn't. And of course we wanted to be one of the ones that did. So that was what the street lighting was about.
I remember being there. It was actually, I was very happy to be with you at the AME convention. So, and I'm happy to note, actually, it looks like in the letter that they are doing a review. So we'll have to see what the outcome of the review is, but at least you know some.
And I'm not sure if we talked at the meeting or afterwards, but I'm one of the proponents on council that really feels we should be going dark. But most of them won't agree with me.
We didn't talk about that.
Well, it's big in California, you know. Is there anyone else, anything else on the street lighting, the roads, and the sidewalk repairs that anybody would like to add? No? Okay, the next item is biodiesel credits. I'll let you speak.
Yeah, Danielle, we've done a little bit of research since, and it sounds like maybe the program doesn't exist. Are you very familiar with the biodiesel credit program? Nothing about it. I talked to actually Minister McQuaid-Boyd the day before yesterday, and she's going to get back to us on it. So maybe it really doesn't have to come up and confuse you any further, because you've got a lot on your plate. But it is just about the credits that were allocated for the area in a program that existed a couple of years ago, where the government put money into a biodiesel plant here that now it never functioned. Like, it was just a project that didn't come to fruition. But now what happens to the credits, and do we need to put a process in place to get the credits back if there's going to be somebody that needs them in the future, or whether they need to, whether we need them or not.
Right. So, I mean, if you feel that you had enough of a conversation with Minister McQuaig-Boyd about it, we can leave it at that. If you need any further support afterwards, then we can talk about that in terms of specific scenarios. It did, though, there is going to be a lot of opportunity in terms of funding, in terms of the climate leadership strategy that we're going forward with, and the chance to share in the carbon levy in order to reduce essentially the carbon footprint of our communities. So I'm hoping that you're aware of the announcement already we made, that municipalities will be able to access some funding in terms of adding solar to structures with that. So if you haven't, then definitely look in. We have announced that we do have funding available in terms of for both farms and municipalities for that, and that's, I mean, it's just a first step in terms of the rollout moving forward. So a lot of municipalities have expressed excitement to me about the potential for going more green with support from the province. So keep that in mind, that there will be dollars flowing with that in the future when the levy's in place.
So maybe we'll just follow up with you if we don't get satisfactory sort of results from that conversation.
Okay, and almost the last item is Tolko Industries. And we do have some questions. We have a meeting coming up with Tolko Industries ourselves as a council, but we're just wondering, what have you heard?
So my last conversation with Tolko, I was under no impression that they had any intention of never starting it up again. They seem to still very much have a thought in mind that it was a temporary closure. Now, that was a few months ago. I don't know if it may have changed, but that was the conversation at that point in time. Now, I know one of the questions you had was about the FMAs that Tolko has. And I actually had asked this question on your behalf of forestry, and I realized as soon as I read it that I actually haven't got an answer. So I will ask them again to make sure that I get an answer back on that, because there was a lot of questions around FMAs in particular.
Yeah, and we've been told that it's been temporary, but it's been temporary for a long time. There was a price that they had to meet, like the price of lumber had to be at a point. It's at that point. We still haven't heard what's going to be opening, so it's a bit frustrating that they might just be changing all the time and no real plans to open it. So if they're not going to open, we'd like to be able to start marketing that wood to somebody else that would open a plant here and force Tolko to either, put up or move out.
And I can certainly ask about the FMAs. That's well within our purview. And at what point do we consider it a temporary closure and them not needing the FMA for that point. I do know that we have been aggressively pushing the marketing of our wood products in Asia in particular, because there's actually a huge opportunity for the market there. So we are working really hard to ensure that the potential is there, that makes more sense for them to reopen with that. Also, in terms of the climate change strategy, we're working with them to ensure, because they're a more trade exposed industry, to support them and ensure they're protected there. So we're working really hard with the industry we really see an important part of the diversification of industry. We all know what the dependence on oil and gas has led to, and we really consider forestry an important part of that. So we're certainly supporting the industry, hopefully knowing that that's all there. They'll be a little more inspired to move forward. But certainly, if the wood's sitting there not being used and they're clearly not going to open, then we can have the conversation about the FMA for sure.
Any other questions on? And then there's the last page, which is almost blank, but I'm sure you'll.
It's almost blank, but you're going to fill it for us. It's grant funding. What is, when will we know more about our actual MSI? And I'm going to let our CAO chime in.
We're in the budget process right now. So.
Yes.
So we're looking at setting our final budget for council and the town of High Prairie, so we need some numbers, secure numbers.
So we're certainly working hard on budgeting ourselves. It's always a weird, frustrating thing the way our budget years do not line up with each other. It's always an interesting challenge for municipalities in the province to work together on that. Well, certainly fairly soon after we open session on March 8th, we'll be moving forward with our budget, and then you'll be able to see some more details on that. In terms, so was it specifically MSI you wanted to talk about, or just grant funding in general? Well, certainly in a big priority right now, obviously, for the whole province and every individual and business and every level of government is, what the heck do we do about the fact that our economy is really, really struggling and so many families are being so challenged. So we certainly are trying to be as creative as possible in terms of leveraging a lot of the resources that everybody has to provide some support with that. So we're still working on the job creation tax credit that may be coming to communities where we restored the STEP grant, which I think can help out with creating jobs, but also providing some much needed support to the municipalities. We have done some grants in terms of supporting the tourism industry, which isn't necessarily directly to the municipality, but can help with the health of the region, which I know is a priority for you. And I can just go on and on. We're constantly trying to think, how do we work on that? So in terms of municipal affairs, the biggest one is MSI. From there. Was there something specific, or are you just kind of in general curious?
I was just wondering if any new programs will be rolling out in your, but I suppose you're going to be waiting for the March 8th budget to...
Yeah, I'm probably not going to give you tons of details about where we're going with the March 8th budget in advance.
Well, we would be grant application ready.
That is true. That is true. Likely somewhat similar to you, there is a lot of conversation that happens right up to the last minute. So I honestly, we have not nailed down and approved even what we're going to present yet. So it would be very premature to.
And that includes anything with linear assessment as well?
In terms of linear assessment, well, I've been very clear in saying that it's not going to be pulled and shipped to Edmonton, Calgary, and any city, period. That we really do see it as an important tool to ensuring that rural Alberta stays healthy and sustainable. I grew up in Slave Lake. I have the same understanding of the fact, especially being in the rural north, of the fact that despite the fact that the majority of the population is in Edmonton and Calgary, we do an awful lot for the province, and we have an awful lot of challenges in terms of the infrastructure that we deal with that's very different. So, keeping that perspective in mind, That was definitely the intention, that whatever we do with linear, and that even hasn't been completely nailed down. The only absolute commitment I can say is it is for rural Alberta, without a doubt.
Well, it's nice to hear that is, and so firmly too. Councillor Gilroy?
Knowing that the Prime Minister just met with Premier Notley, and that we have a large Métis First Nation group, are there any plans that you know of that would help a community like ours to work in those new collaborations you're talking about, that would maybe allow First Nation, our county, and us to benefit on some projects?
That is a fantastic question, and one that I'm asking myself. Certainly, we're right now in the midst of a review of the MGA, the Municipal Government Act, and probably within the first week of getting on board, I was like, okay, so where do First Nations fit in this? And they looked at me completely blankly, at which point I realized that we had a lot of work to do in a reasonably short period of time. So we are looking at that now in terms of that, and certainly not just in municipal affairs. We need to have conversations, with infrastructure. I know education's very open to trying to figure out how to partner better, and we need to move forward with being better at supporting collaboration instead of very much seeing it as an us-them kind of alternative, which it has been in the past.
Well, the reason I was also thinking that is, if I'm not mistaken, a good portion of our social housing is being accessed, and the waiting list is being accessed by First Nation, Aboriginal people. And if you can't get it through your government alone, is there a possibility that Premier Notley could talk to the Prime Minister or the Aboriginal Affairs minister there, and say, can we combine portfolios a little bit so that we can get the social housing answered? That we can address the needs of the First Nation and make them feel important, as important as they truly are in our economy and in our nation.
And I've been pretty open about the fact that collaboration is a key priority of mine. I get really excited by collaborative projects, and really excited. So it's certainly been a challenge trying to address some of the barriers there is to collaboration going forward. That's certainly been within my own portfolio with the MGA. I've been pushing really hard to pull down any barriers to collaboration, and in fact incentivizing collaboration instead. It's been interesting talking about specific projects and questions where I've seen that maybe some other departments still are working hard on pulling those barriers down. So I will continue to push for that on cabinet to support that kind of collaboration. And I think it is somewhat very new to the departments, both provincially and federally, to have a government who actually wants to see that happen. So it is taking some time to kind of change that culture and push forward and come up with new processes, a new way of doing things and talking to each other. But it's certainly on our agenda. I really believe it's on the agenda of the new federal government as well. And I'm looking forward to tearing down some of those walls and making some exciting projects happen. So,
going back to the MSI, that's sort of your bailiwick.
Yeah.
And so the discussions that you've entertained thus far with your people, I suppose, when we are putting together our bids for infrastructure, and when we're looking at an aging infrastructure that we have, can we count on, should we be counting on MSI grants? Do you know if they're on the chopping block? Are you in support of the MSI grants?
I am completely in support of the MSI grants. I mean, the truth is in the past 5 months, we've lost $5 billion in revenue. And really $5 billion in revenue. And that is something that I think is a challenge right across the board for everyone. So, I mean, to expect that it may be looking exactly what it might have looked like a year ago when the price of oil was where it was at, I very much am fighting really hard for the MSI. I can't say it's going to be completely untouched because of the challenges everyone's facing right now, and you know, trying as much as possible to find the right balance between everybody to maintain and support all the ongoing important services. But certainly the infrastructure that MSI provides for continues to be a priority, and there will be MSI. I just can't absolutely promise that it's going to look exactly like it would have a year ago. Yeah. Which, you know, probably is not a huge surprise to you. But yeah.
All right. No other questions from there. I actually would like to take the opportunity to open it to the gallery, if you would mind accepting any questions. Are there any questions?
Linda, Mayor Cox, sorry if I can just intervene.
Yep.
I have had several back-to-back meetings, so including no interval whatsoever. So if I can take
Yes,
a brief
yes.
moment, I will be right back.